Thank you, Senator Whitmire. Senator West, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
Questions of the author.
Will Senator Hager yield?
Yes, sir.
Basic question, Senator Hager. First
Yes.
of all, thank you. Basic question, do you believe that a woman has a right, the ultimate right, to determine her health care decisions?
Her health care, could you be more
Do
specific?
you believe that a woman has a right to choose
To choose,
health care in terms of health care decisions, health care providers, what she does with her body? Do you believe a woman has that right?
she has many constitutional rights, yes.
I'm not talking about many constitutional rights as it relates to making a determination as to whether or not to have a baby or not. Do you believe a woman should have the ultimate right to make that determination?
I think that there are constitutional provisions that have been upheld for many years that a woman has a right to choose, but a state also has the interest to provide parameters for health, the quality of health care, as well as, in this bill particularly, dealing with pain of an unborn child. So there are parameters there to that ultimate choice you're talking about.
And so somewhere in there is your belief in terms of what a woman's rights are as it relates to whether or not to have a baby?
Well, it's somewhere right there is, if we're talking about this legislation or any legislation in other states, one, if you want to ask about whether it would be deemed constitutionally, either state or federally,
Well,
a woman's right to choose has been upheld,
do you believe,
and subsequent court cases have also talked on
do
that
you believe
point.
in a woman's rights under Roe versus Wade?
Roe v. versus Wade is the law of the land today, but also Casey v. Planned Parenthood, which came subsequent to that, and other court cases have better defined what the constitutional laws are.
Now let's kind of talk about this issue. And I heard that I'm not going to be repetitive in terms of the conversations
Yes, sir.
that you had and questions answered between you and the dean. But what I want to talk about is Section 2 of your bill. I want to start off there about accessibility. You with me?
Yes, I'm listening. Yes, sir.
Okay. Section 2 of your bill requires physicians who perform or induce abortions to have active admitting privileges at hospitals of a hospital that is located no further than 30 miles from the location at which the abortion is performed or induced, and provides obstetrical or gynecological health care services. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Senator, are you aware of how many counties in the state of Texas that don't have, and I'm asking you this in the negative, that do not have hospitals?
I do not know the exact number. I would imagine you do, but I also know that in every clinic today that exists is within a 30-mile range, actually closer to a secular hospital in Texas.
Well, there's about 65 counties out of the 254 that do not have hospitals. Do you know how many counties where you have hospitals that don't have obstetric services? There's about 74 of those in the entire state of Texas, and I'm getting this from the health department,
Okay.
so these are not my numbers.
Yes, sir. Please.
And so, right off the bat, the women in 139 Texas counties are effectively precluded from being served by licensed abortion facilities. Now, you just mentioned a few minutes ago that most of those licensed abortion facilities that we have, and it's 36 as I understand, and 6 are ambulatory service centers. Is that correct?
You're talking about their...
We have 2 types of centers, one being a licensed abortion facility,
Yes,
and then we have ambulatory service
we do.
centers. And there's about six of those ambulatory service centers that, of the 6, I think 4 perform abortions, and then we have about 36 licensed abortions facilities in the state of Texas.
I believe those numbers are correct.
And all the numbers I'm getting from you from the health department, so there's not an advocacy group one way or the other
Right,
on this. So
right.
I think those are probably the most credible numbers. When we look at the issue of admission, can you tell me, and let me make certain that you understand where I'm coming from. I'm looking at the medical Practice Act in the state of Texas. And it's my understanding, and if there's physicians here that can correct me if I'm wrong, that you've got to be licensed under that act in order to practice medicine in the state of Texas. Would you agree?
I would believe if you're a doctor, you have to be licensed just as you would a nurse or attorney or someone else with a professional degree.
When we begin to look at the Medical Practice Act, as it relates to admitting privileges, what is the definition of admitting privileges under Section 2 of your bill?
Well, every hospital has their own process that they go through. Any doctor can apply for those admitting privileges in the state of Texas. So it's up to that hospital specifically as to what is their process for those admitting privileges,
Are there different types of admitting privileges in the state of Texas?
as to different specialties.
As
You
only
may
to-
be, admitted for one specialty or another at a hospital.
And so what you're telling the members on the floor is that the only difference in admitting privileges is between specialties. Is that correct?
Well, I'm telling you that every hospital has their own different criteria that they go by within parameters of a doctor being admitted to that hospital.
Are some more stringent than the others?
I would imagine that some are.
Okay. Can you give me an idea? Well, let me ask this. You believe in private contracting, do you not?
I believe in contracts.
Okay, and you would not attempt to abrogate a contract as a member of the Senate?
Well, I also know that we do put parameters in place on those contracts. I mean, you had some legislation earlier this session to deal with contracts dealing with rental properties. And those properties, if someone's renter contract, they had to be moved because of a natural disaster. So we deal with contracts, but sometimes we put parameters on those contracts, as your legislation was trying to do.
You would agree with me that you would agree with me that in terms of a physician receiving privileges at a hospital, that's a contract, that's a contractual relationship.
That's an agreement between those parties, but that doctor is asking for that privilege, and today in the state of Texas, 2/3 of the doctors roughly have admitting privileges.
Can you tell me, and citizens gathered here today and throughout this country, whether there has been any other law passed that requires a physician other than someone that's performing an abortion to have privileges at a hospital?
I do not recall any off the top right now,
So
Senator.
this is probably the first time in the history of this state that state government is saying that a physician, one type of physician, must have privileges at a hospital. Is that
It does
correct?
not say that
In order
Doctor-
to perform the procedure.
it does not say that doctor has to have abortion privileges at that hospital, but it does say that the
Within 30
doctor
miles.
has to have privileges at a hospital. There is a
Oh, I
peer
understand-
review
I understand that.
process there.
I understand that.
Exactly.
I understand that. But we've never done this before, have we?
Not that I can recall. Not while I've
Probably hadn't been
sitting
done
on
in the
the
entire
floor.
country.
No, it actually, admitting privileges is the law in 15 other states.
So what you're saying then, that if someone is going to perform an abortion in 15 other states, they have to have privileges at the hospital?
Yes.
Could you give me an example?
Yes, I can tell you what those are. Alabama, Arizona, Florida, Illinois, South Carolina, Tennessee, Utah, Oklahoma, North Dakota, Missouri, Louisiana, Mississippi, Kansas, Indiana.
Of those states, how many of them just recently or are in the process of passing similar type legislation?
I don't have the exact dates of that legislation in front of me, Senator.
Would you agree with me that some of those states have passed legislation and that legislation is currently being contested in courts, in the court of law?
On admitting privileges, I'm not on the Wisconsin law, which is a 30-mile parameter privileges, that's the one I'm aware of. An injunction was put on that state.
Okay, but the fact is and I'm not going to hold you to the...
But that was just 2 days ago, so that's the why
and I'm not
I
going to
recall
hold you to the
that.
states. There's litigation concerning this particular subject matter throughout the country. Now, the 30-mile radius in terms of privileges, and again, I'm talking to the Department of Health. Now, and also the Texas Medical Board about privileges and what is taken into consideration as it relates to providing or giving physicians privileges. It's my understanding that in order to get privileges at a hospital, you've got to live in proximity to the hospital and make certain that you're on call. And I know Dr. Dewell and Dr. Campbell, they're here, and if I'm wrong about that, they can tell me that. But I got this from the Texas Medical Board, that if you are going to be considered for privileges at a hospital, you have got to make yourself available to be on call.
Are you asking?
Well, I'm asking you, but I'm looking at them.
I mean, I see Dr. Dewell jumping up, so I guess he wants to answer part of that. But I don't, if you want him to,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
happy to
fine.
yield.
Yes.